Oh, we called the minutes for Taco Bell. You don't remember that part?
I can do it.
Oh, yeah, Taco Bell. There you go, the 12 works.
I was not weather aware when I started coming outside. Rain?
Hey Siri, what's the weather like today? Siri told me it was going to be 54 degrees, and I said, okay, I'm going to wear a sweater.
She missed out.
Well, she told me it was going to rain, but it may have been. But there's always that possibility. Rain call. Carry. Table. It's like an activity table, and you push the buttons and it plays music wires and stuff. But it's not always activated. And I came in the other day, he was screaming. I was telling him, he calls Siri Carrie. He's like, Carrie, play a song, whatever. And I mean, he's like screaming at this activity. When I just like, Ray, it's not voice activated. You actually have to push it. Technology and kids. All right, is it 10 o'clock?
Almost clock hours.
Close enough. Yeah. Need the clock hour? All right, we'll call this meeting to order. Notice the meeting was properly posted Friday, May 8th. This is the regularly scheduled budget evaluation team agenda for Tuesday, May 12th, 2020. We'll do a roll call this morning. Please announce your presence and how you are participating in the meeting this morning, whether you're present in the meeting room, whether you are, looks like everybody else would be video, not telephone. So, Ms. Miller.
Present.
Ms. Laurent.
Present through video, WebExing.
Thank you. Mr. Honeycutt. Present. Where are you located, Mr. Lambert? Or Mr. Honeycutt, I'm sorry, Dano, where are you located?
I am present 3 bodies down from Mr. Lambert.
My brain's just a little head because Lambert's next. So, Mr. Lambert.
Present in person.
Mr. Davidson.
Present in person.
Mr. Morrison.
Present in person.
Mr. Mertens.
Present in person.
And Compton is present in person. All right, item number 1, discussion of possible action to set date, time, and place. Meeting will reconvene in the event technical difficulties arise during the course of this meeting and cannot be corrected within a maximum of 30 minutes.
Make a motion for Wednesday at 10 a.m.
Second. A motion for Wednesday at 10 a.m. and a second.
We haven't had any problems, so I wouldn't worry about that.
Okay, the motion in the second is if we have technical difficulties that do not allow us to reconvene within 30 minutes, that this meeting will resume on Wednesday of this week at 10 a.m. in BOCC room. We'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Laurent?
Aye.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Mr. Lambert? Aye. Mr. Davidson?
Aye.
Mr. Morrison? Aye. Ms. Mertens?
Aye.
And Compton is an aye. Item number 2, discussion of possible action to approve the minutes of the regular meeting dated Tuesday, April 7th, and special meetings dated Tuesday, April 7th, Wednesday, April 8th, Thursday, April 9th. There were no quorums on the 7th, 8th, and 9th. We have a motion on the meetings.
Motion approved.
Got a motion by Mr. Honeycutt to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Davidson. Roll call vote. Ms. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Laurent?
Aye.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Mr. Lambert? Aye. Mr. Davidson?
Aye.
Mr. Morrison? Aye. Ms. Mertens?
Aye.
And Compton is an aye. Motion passes. Minutes are approved. Item number 3, discussion and possible action to receive department's fiscal year 2021 estimate of needs. I think this was on here as a just in case. I don't know. Is there anything? If no action, we will move on to item number 4. Item number 4, discussion and possible action to recommend to the budget board a transfer of appropriation in the amount of $186,000 from General Fund Juvenile Bureau 526. $146,000 of that will come from the salary account. $40,000 will come from the benefit account. Transfer to Juvenile Detention 525. $62,000 would go to the salary account and $124,000 to benefits. Purpose of the transfer is to cover payroll through the end of the fiscal year. We generally do not take these items up as a recommendation to budget board on transfers, but this is 2 separate budgets, and discussion would at least be warranted to see what's going on. I don't necessarily know that we'll need an actual recommendation, but we'll get to that after discussion. Do we have anybody from Juvenile on with us this morning? I don't see anybody in the room. Ms. Overstreet, are you with us?
Hear me? Yes,
Jamie, is that you?
that was Hannah. Can you hear me?
We sure can. Thank you, Ms. Overstreet. You've got the floor if you'd like to discuss this item.
Yes, we have, I've called in. We have Hannah Dix, the HR manager, with us, and we also have Valerie Lee, the business manager. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, all right. I'm going to proceed then. When we did the raises and the amount of money that we estimated that we needed to finish the year back in early December, we had used an average salary and fringe based on what we knew at the time, which was about 5 months worth of payroll data. At that time, we were averaging around 255, but we anticipated filling a couple more positions. So we used a $265,000 average for salary and $110,000 average for total fringe. Since that time, we began to anticipate COVID after the first of the year, that we may have had staff that would be ill or family members that would be ill, and we would start to experience vacancies, and we wouldn't be able to afford to do that. We knew that we were going to have all or almost all of our units open so that we could have isolation units and continue to separate males, females, YOs, and JDLs. So even though our count has remained low once we got it down the first couple of months of COVID, we've still had to maintain open units due to isolation and separation of the 2 types of offenders and the genders. We also didn't anticipate that our turnover and would basically shut down. We thought that it would take a few months for that to start to show promising results. We also thought it would take a few months for us to be able to hire quicker than we had been able to, but that was not the case. It was almost automatic that people stayed and that we were able to hire easily. So with all of those things together, and of course we didn't know about COVID when we entered this, it caused our estimates to be too low. We do have the money in our overall budget to cover it, and so we're just asking to make those transfers so that we can do that. Are there any questions?
So transferring this large of a sum from your bureau department isn't going to impact your bureau division for the remainder of the fiscal year?
We anticipate having about 37,000 left in salary and 26,000 left in fringe in the Bureau when it's all said and done. One of the things that happened that's caused us to be able to have this kind of money to move is that in December, at the same time that we were working on the DO raises and turnover, our caseloads in probation had dropped and were pretty low. So we started holding vacancies because we didn't need as many officers. Then COVID hit and we sent officers home and supervisors were handling some of the extra cases, and that had an impact. Now we are starting to hire up again as the courts are becoming more active, and we have taken that into account and included that in the money that we would need to finish the year. So we'll come in with just a little bit less, maybe a little more than we anticipate, but we think a total between salary and fringe of around 14, maybe 60,000, maybe a little more.
Okay, if you don't mind, 2 follow-ups. You had mentioned that you held vacancies, and then when COVID hit, you also had individuals that you removed from the facility for safety reasons, and that impacted those individuals. Were they not continued to be paid?
Right. So we had, at any given time, we might have had 7 officers out, but they're being paid. But we were having to still hire people.
Okay, but that didn't reduce the amount of money needed in your salary account because of them being off-site. Is that correct?
Well, are we talking Detention or Bureau now?
Bureau. Because I took your comment a minute ago as the opposite, that since COVID hit and you had some of your probation staff off-site, that helped you save some of the money as well. That's the way I took that comment, but maybe I took it wrong.
Yeah, I think you misunderstood what I was trying to communicate, and I probably communicated it very poorly. We were able to carry vacancies because caseloads were low. Then officers were sent home, and the activity that they needed to do on their caseloads was also reduced. So the workload was less, and supervisors picked up some of that, which allowed us to generate some savings that we are now using to apply towards this deficit. Does that make more sense?
Well, that re-solidified my interpretation initially. You said that gave you savings because you were able to have them at home, and since there was a reduced workload, you had fewer people in there providing the same services. But I don't see how that would have saved you money, because those individuals, I'm assuming, were still being paid.
It saved me money, Cody, because I wasn't filling the vacancies that I would have been filling had the courts been fully operational and COVID had not happened. I didn't need to fill some of the vacancies because there weren't as many caseload duties to conduct while officers were at home. Field visits were shut down. Home visits were shut down. Almost all court activity was shut down.
Right, I got that. From your comment, I interpreted that as you had savings because you were, number one, not having to fill positions because it was a less workload, and 2, you had individuals at home and not at work. So maybe I just misunderstood your comment. The other question is, you've started to ramp back up, and I'm assuming in the near future you'll be back up with those individuals, plus the backfill that you have now hired. That, in conjunction with your detention staff hiring and needing some more money in there, are you anticipating needing more money in your fiscal year budget next year than what you had this year? Because we had that discussion in December, and we were assured that the budget that you got this year would be sufficient for next year.
Well, that was also the fact that we only got 7.33 months worth of money for those raises. They weren't annualized. So
Right.
my comment, I didn't mean to imply that you all would not need to annualize those.
I seem to remember that my question was specifically that that number was not annualized. So would you need money for the annualization plus money for new positions or whatever for the next fiscal year? Is that?
That's not what I recall. I don't recall a conversation about annualization at all.
Okay. You do not? Yeah, because I remember you 3 or 4 times to make sure that we weren't going to need additional money next fiscal year. Danny's shaking his head.
That's why I remember it.
And Mr. Davidson looks like it's between consternation and agreement. I don't know.
Trying to remember exactly how that went down.
So anyway, we can cross that bridge, I guess, at a later date, but those are some of my concerns.
I have a follow-up question. Since this committee is recommending a flat budget for next year, if this transfer is approved, will that then be your new budget to start the year with, Jamie?
Is that for me?
Yes, ma'am.
No, I thought that what you all were going to do was start our new budget just like it looked like at the beginning of last year before any of this occurred, and that we would be doing budget hearings probably in August or September. Is that not correct?
Well, my understanding is the flat budget would be as it is today. So if we make this transfer, does that now become your new budget going into next year?
I guess we could do that. I mean, either way, we're going to have a discussion about the estimate of needs.
Right.
At what point do people make transfers? Is there ultimately budget board will approve May 21st flat budget, so it would be as of that date how it looks. Is that right? Or mechanically, I'm asking,
I think
what's easier for your office?
Yeah, I think so, because that budget is ever changing throughout the year. If you're looking at flat budget, to me, that's the budget as of that day.
Because that's usually May 21st, or that budget board in May is when they would normally, approve our recommendation. So we think that would kind of be the date that it's frozen.
Yeah, I mean, if I understand it correctly, in the past, you could make transfers once they were approved, but it didn't make a permanent change in your beginning estimate of needs the following year. I guess it's a little different when you have a budget in 2 parts, perhaps.
Yeah, and I think Danny's concern is making sure that you're in the position to start out the year that you need to be in. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct.
So
We will be in a position to start out the year okay, assuming that we're going to have discussions about what's appropriate for our final estimate of needs sometime in late summer or early fall, which I thought that was the plan.
And that is, and we got to see the state plan is going to be on the contract and all of that. So
Right.
there's lots of moving parts on what that.
Exactly.
Because we talked about that, you know, the flat budgets, and we can get more into it in item 8, but it does specifically apply here. You know, come September, you know, those individual budgets may go up and then they go down, depending upon the need.
Right.
So,
I'll make a motion to recommend this transfer.
Second.
okay, we got a recommendation from Mr. Lambert and a second from Mr. Davidson to make a recommendation to approve the transfer from general fund bureau, $146,000. I'm sorry, $186,000, $146,000 of which coming from the bureau salary account, $40,000 from the bureau benefits account, the full sum going to the juvenile bureau detention budget, $62,000 of that to the salary and $124,000 to benefits. We'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Miller,
Aye.
Ms. Lawrence,
Aye.
Mr. Honeycutt.
Aye.
Mr. Lambert.
Aye.
Mr. Davidson.
Aye.
Mr. Morrison. Aye. Ms. Mertens.
Aye.
And Compton is an aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Jamie. Appreciate your time.
Thank you all.
All right, item number 5, discussion and possible action recommending the budget board to transfer of appropriations from general fund reserve 995 to facilities management custodial 285 operation in the amount of $80,250. Purpose of the transfer is to fund additional janitorial staff needed to disinfect the buildings.
This is,
We got Mr. Monroe here, if there's any questions for him.
make the motion that we recommend the transfer.
I have one question. The $80,250, that gets you through the end of the fiscal year.
That gets us through the end of the fiscal year at the current rate of payment for these individuals. Now, to continue through the end of the calendar year, there may be some escalation. Our janitorial bid comes up for renewal, and I could almost guess that there would be some escalation in the hourly fee we're paying these people. We've called for an additional 26 individuals, and we're expending with materials approximately $10,800 a week.
Now, the 26 is 26 more than the general contract that we have in place.
That's
We've
correct.
had 6 of those 26 in place for, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something
Yes.
like that. And this would be 20 on top of that. That's the computation of the 26. And these are dollars that would be anticipated to be able to be reimbursed to facilities from the CARES money that the county has already received. This is just a function of you need the money now to be able to get moving forward, and we don't have all the mechanisms in place for the CARES money transfers and that kind of stuff yet. So we will anticipate this plus probably the 6 individuals that you added for the last 2 months plus additional janitorial supplies that you needed. So,
Right. And we'll have a better figure on the consumption of the janitorial supplies, the disinfectant materials that we're using in 2 to 3 days.
Okay.
The rate of usage.
Is there any other questions?
Well,
No, there's-
Keith, do you have like a breakdown of this money, like some type of spreadsheet so Brent can look at it?
Yes, I have.
Could you get that to us?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, we've got a motion on the table. Mr. Davidson has made a motion to approve, to recommend to Budget Board to approve this transfer. Is there a second? Second. Did you pick? Who you write down there for your second? We had dueling seconds. If you're clear, then we're clear. You're not clear? All right, we got a motion and a second to have a recommendation to Budget Board to transfer from General Fund Reserve 995 to Facilities Management Custodial 285 operation, an amount of $80,250. to fund additional janitorial staff needed for the remainder of the fiscal year. The roll call vote. Ms. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Lauren?
Aye.
Mr. Honeycutt?
Aye.
Mr. Lambert?
Aye.
Mr. Davidson?
Aye.
Mr. Morrison?
Aye.
Ms. Mertens?
Aye.
Compton is an aye. Motion passes. Kelly, as we go through here, you'll get these on budget board's recommendations from BET as we go, please. Kelly?
You will.
Okay, I'll call for it.
I'll answer that one.
Okay, thank you. All right, item number 6, discussion of possible action related. Thank you, Kelly, appreciate that.
Well, I think 5 is already on.
Did you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we heard you, thank you.
She's on a pretty big delay.
I was just saying, I think item 5 is already on.
The second. Okay. Item number 6, discussion of possible action related to the BET FY21 budget recommendation related to cash transfer items such as employee benefits, workers' comp, self-insurance, capital project.
Yes, I have to put this on. I do have a spreadsheet. Walt is listening. He can pull that up. The one that says fiscal year 2021 general fund request, flat budget, Walt. The first tab. There you go. Yeah, if you can make that full screen. And you also pull up, there's 2 or 3 PDFs, one for employee benefits projection 2021. There you go. We can see that. No. Employee benefits projection.
That's a lot easier.
If you can make that full
Maybe
screen.
can use it the way we're supposed to use it. Then you can do it himself.
All right, as we,
Is that a motion? Yeah. Is there a second?
as we work through this recommendation for a flat budget, part of our budget, our cash transfers to our self-insurance, employee benefits, workers' comp, self-insurance, and those change from year to year. So I didn't want us just to throw in what we had budgeted last year because that really doesn't get where we need to be for these. Walt, if you could scroll up a little bit more on that one. Keep going.
Danny, can I ask a question? The revenue projections that we approved in April, they're sufficient enough to do a flatline budget even with funds, right?
They are, yes.
And how much was that amount in reserve? I just kind of foresaw, just starting out, that we would, I mean, just take the budget as it stands May 21st for all funds transfers and really take a look at it.
Okay. Well, just take, for instance, employee benefits this year, we transferred 3 point. Next year, we're projecting we're going to need 5.8 million. You don't see those projections changing as we go through the budget process. Workers' comp, transferred 555 last year. We're looking at 810,000 for next fiscal year. Self-insurance, 10,000 last year, 60,000 for next fiscal year. I just thought it would be prudent to go ahead and set those aside now. And that way we'll know exactly how much we have to put in reserve instead of just putting the amount.
3.58, 565,000 to 810, and 1060. What's that? Do you have that? Where's it?
Yeah, so if we did the 5.8, 810,000, 60,000, and then 800,000 for the fund benefit plan, that leaves 5.1 million in reserve. That's leaving all of this part of the budget flat. Okay. Another part of that is capital projects. Last year, we had $1,228,466 to go into capital projects from cash. Now this year we have $3,650,000 in requests for capital projects. So, you know, with the flat budget, I didn't want to just put the same $1,228,000 because those were tied to particular budgets. So I thought maybe we could, at least with this, work through a couple capital projects and maybe transfer some cash based on actual projects instead of just a flat amount. Whatever's left, obviously that goes into reserve. And all the department budget's flat. Transfer some cash based.
Kelly's got it to
Obviously.
Danny, I know some of those accounts, we have to have a bare minimum in those, correct?
Yeah, like workers' comp, we have to carry a minimum of $1 million.
Right.
Based on projections, we need that 810,000 to get us to that level.
Okay, so I think maybe those that have to change now to meet those requirements, maybe we do those up front, and then the others that can be adjusted down the road, we adjust down the road.
Million work, though, is that self-imposed?
No, that's hard.
It's a-
I'm sure. Budget.
I see. Okay. You're saying the two that have requirements are the workers' comp and self-imposed.
Self-insurance, we try to historically maintain about 100,000 in there. So 60,000 keeps us at that level. That's not a requirement. Putting 3.4 million in employee benefits. Yes, that's what we started. And that would be enough to get us through, obviously, a couple months to address it. So
What was the total for 3.4 for benefits, 810 for,
So he was asking 5.8.
I was asking 5.8.
okay, that's what it was.
Premium, which we're seeing the premium decrease by all the departments and employees, so that extra funding picks up the decrease in the revenue going into the fund. I mean, it's gonna have to happen. Either we do it now or we do it July or August. And that's not gonna change. I don't see it change.
And then the other side of the expense, if you want to go to the doctor as much or the elective surgery, that claim just account.
What you call it, capital project transfer.
It's just hard to see the list. without having to.
Is there a way to attach these documents to the agenda like we do the other agendas beforehand? I mean, like, right now, we could all just be staring at those.
This gives you an opportunity to exercise your eye muscles.
I'm more worried about you. You're always wanting to blow it up.
All right.
I can
Every
read
year
those.
it's Danny, I see your point. I'm fine kind of either way, with the exception of the workers' comp. I think we should set that at $1 million up front, and we've set a standard on the 100,000 on the self-insurance. So I think those two, we wouldn't, I think it would be prudent of us to go ahead and make those recommended changes. The other two, I see validity both ways. I mean, the capital projects, we're talking about stuff, I mean, we haven't discussed any of the items, right, or anything.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I don't see at this point moving money into capital projects unless we go through the projects and determine which ones need funding. Start with this.
and if the money is in reserve, we can always, whatever entity it is that needs the capital project funded immediately at the beginning of the fiscal year, we can always have those come to us as recommendations to transfer out of the reserve account into the capital projects account and create the line item. That's true.
Or, you know, one thing we've done the last couple of years, we put $300,000 in capital projects as needed.
Yeah, I would like to keep that in there.
So that could be put in 300,000 to start the year as a cash transfer.
What was the total capital projects request?
$3,650,000 from facilities and from MIS.
I guess even if we left capital projects at the current level, it's still not tied to any projects. So you could go say, I didn't know if someone might have some projects that absolutely need to be done July 1 through, say, September 30th, while we're hashing stuff out. But, I mean, they could come, but it would just save us a step if it's already in capital projects. But again, they couldn't spend it until you assign it to a project. Otherwise, they would have to go through and ask for a transfer, and then ask for it to be, assigned to a project.
And if we start off the fiscal year with a flat budget in capital projects as well, then we still have 1.1 million in there, right? Isn't that what we did last year?
$1,228,000.
$1.2 million.
Yeah.
So there's money that if we left it flat, there would still be that amount in there
You could put it all as needed.
that wouldn't need to be, up until we got to that amount, there wouldn't need to be any transfers from reserve. We'd have that money in there. So.
What I'm hearing is $810,000 for workers' comp, the new $60,000 for self-insurance, the new amount. employee benefits, that's a 3.4 million current year transfer amount. $1,228,466 for capital projects, put that in as needed line item, and $800,000 for defined benefit plan.
That's what I'm seeing.
And whatever's left, so I can figure that out this way.
We'll go to reserve.
Leave $6,355,176 in reserve to start the fiscal.
Say that number again, 6 million.
$6,355,176.
What's the carryover in reserve gonna be for ballpark?
Kind of gets backed up as part of the,
Yeah, that's
That's all I was wondering. Part of the 6.
it's a good 3 number.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Was that an official motion?
That's not an official amount. I will verify that amount. We'll take it back to my office and I'll send that out to the committee.
As part of the reserve.
That's the unaudited amount.
As far as the reserve, the amount that we go into reserve? Okay, yeah, I think the motion that we would have here wouldn't, because we're gonna have the flat budget plus these adjustments, and then whatever's left, it just rolls into reserve, so that's gonna be what it's gonna be. So I think the motion here would be that the cash transfer items of workers of the cash transfer items, employee benefits would remain flat to begin the fiscal year. Capital projects would remain flat to begin the fiscal year. Workers' comp, we would increase the budget by $810,000 from last fiscal year, and self-insurance, we would increase that by $60,000 over last fiscal year.
Is that saying correctly?
Increase.
Yeah, it's not an increase.
I mean,
It's only
okay,
two.
not increase, but 60,000 instead of
Yes.
the 10,000 that we put last year.
Yeah, and then 550, or the 810.
810 instead of the-
555.
Right, sorry. I did say that completely wrong. 810 in workers' comp, 60 in self-insurance, capital projects and employee benefits remain flat based off last year's budget.
And defined benefit transfer.
Yeah.
Is that your motion, Mr. Lambert?
That is my motion.
Hey,
Okay.
you got it.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. I'm not even gonna try to restate it. We're just gonna vote. All right. Ms. Miller,
Aye.
Ms. Lauren,
Aye.
Mr. Honeycutt,
Aye.
Mr. Lambert,
Aye.
Mr. Davidson.
Aye.
Mr. Morrison,
Aye.
Ms. Martins,
Aye.
and Compton is an aye. Item number 7, discussion and possible action to discuss FY21 funding of the Oklahoma County Detention Center.
So we've recently turned in a budget, will look like if we were, preparing it to the clerk's office. And so basically what we did is we just took it exactly like we did it this year with the same personnel and the same cost centers. And then, I think last year we looked at a number of 420. If we were running it, we wouldn't have asked for 420 this year. So we just took the actual numbers, bumped it up by 16 to get them to 400. Figured that was good for them. Right now it's looking like we've included the 2% and the 3%, so those may come out, but we wanted to go ahead and include that just in case they stayed in. It's looking like on the detention side, we'd be asking for about 1.3-ish less than that. But then there's also, that means there's that corresponding increase on the law enforcement side due to the records people that are coming over in the various other positions. So that's something that we might want to consider whether we want to account for that before the May 21st budget board, go ahead and move those positions over to the law enforcement budget so that we lock in the flat budgets at that time, or are we wanting to wait until September to revisit that?
I know Kelly, emailed those out this morning,
Right.
so I haven't had a chance to
Correct.
look at them. I was just anticipating, unless we done an official document for the jail, from the jail trust, we would just continue with a flatline budget and have the detention center start out with a 30.2, knowing that, you know, people.
Yeah,
You're not shifting people until that
Sure.
happens before June 30th?
Well, like I said, at this point, it's kind of still all under one umbrella. And so it's whether we transfer that now and start picking that up for June, that's one way to do it. If we want to start, we want to wait to realize that until September. I mean, either way. You know, we have been in discussion with Greg Williams and Mark McCubbin, the finance and CEO of the trust, on our budgetary ideas. And so we've got to go over this new one with them, obviously. It's not off the press. But
Let me ask you this, so you have some people prior to June 30th that are coming off the detention budget on the line.
Yeah.
Okay. So then I would just say, you know, put in for a transfer.
Well, and as of right now, we don't exactly know for sure whether the sheriff's office is going to be running the detention center on July 1, or the sheriff's office, whether the sheriff's office or the trust is going to be running it on July 1. Correct.
I would put it to you this way. We've been instructed that since we've been on month to month for the telephone contract and the food contract that we can't extend that because it's been over a year of month to month. And so as of July 1, there will be no contract with the sheriff's office for a food vendor telephone. So I think, unfortunately, the trust is going to lock themselves into that July 1 date. And I know Mark and Greg are pushing for that, and I think there's been a tremendous amount of progress towards that date. That to me is the only real concern about a firm date, is the fact of our inability to have a contract moving forward with a food or telephone vendor. And Aaron, am I blinking?
Right.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, we have a good relationship with Greg and Mark, and we communicate often.
So then, Danny, from a mechanic standpoint, the trust takes over July 1, or your fiscal year budget takes over July 1. If the detention center budget is to the sheriff beginning July 1, if we don't make any changes and everything stays flat and we do everything the same way, then the budget will be with the sheriff. On July 1, can we then just go in and transfer that detention center amount from the sheriff's budget into general government as a line item that we would pay the trust out of? Similar, I know we wouldn't have the contractual relationship that we have with OSU Extension, but we got a line item in there. We pay out to OSU Extension from there. I would anticipate that's probably what we would do, because we're not going to have, whether it's 30 million,
Right.
31, 32 million, 20, 28 million, whatever that dollar amount is, we're not going to have that on July 1 to send out immediately anyway. So is that the mechanism that we would just, after the budget is adopted, we would just turn around and transfer it into general government? Or is that something that we want to look at ahead of time?
That's the way I would see it happening. You know, the budget board always meets that first day of the new fiscal year, carryovers, et cetera, so that could be done.
So we could just transfer it?
Yes, make a line item in general government.
Is that how you would see it as well, being out of general government?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, is there a motion to receive the report? Got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second to receive the report. Roll call vote, Ms. Miller,
Aye.
Ms. Lauren,
Aye.
Mr. Honeycutt,
Aye.
Mr. Lambert,
Aye.
Mr. Davidson,
Aye.
Mr. Morrison, Ms. Mertens,
Aye.
and Compton is an aye. And passes. Item 8, discussion and possible action regarding processes and procedures for fiscal year 21 budget reviews and recommendations. Just wanted to leave this on in case there was some broad discussion that was that anybody wanted to entertain. For instance, we had a little bit of a discussion earlier about whether we're talking about flat budgets from July 1, 2019, or are we talking flat budgets from March 1st, 2020, you know, based on the February 28th numbers, or are we talking about the May 21st, 2020? I don't know if there's any confusion, if everybody's on the same page as to what we're talking about when we're referencing a flat budget.
Probably do it your current budget. Definitely want to pick up what they had July 1 of last year plus anything we did September supplement. I foresaw it being on May 21st, whatever your budget is about, would be loaded for July 1.
That's what I had anticipated as well, but based upon Ms. Overstreet's comment earlier about being what was, you know, loaded on July 1, I didn't know if there was anybody else that was thinking that it was that way versus current dollars.
Well, it would seem that it would be easier to go ahead and make that move with those detention people out. If we're going to base the budget numbers for next fiscal year on May 21st, it would seem to make more sense just to have what that next year would look like already established, rather than trying to circle back around in August or September.
We're going to have to circle back around everything. And we don't have one document from the jail trust. They're taking over their contract, the budget, and technically our recommendation, I mean, granted, budget board can meet again, but it's usually their regular meeting for May 21st.
Yeah.
I was just trying to keep it as simple as possible so we could really dive into the work we need to do.
Right. Well, I think it's also important to remember that the jail budget or the detention budget or the trust budget is a separate budget from the law enforcement budget.
It is, and that's why we broke it up for this year. That's why it's just kind of simple to.
Well, I wanted the agenda item left on there in case there was any discussions that we need to have. Based on Jamie's mentioning of the amount on July 1, I just wanted to make sure that everybody on here, I assumed we were all, when we talked flat budget, we were talking what it was at the fiscal year when it was time to make that recommendation. All transfers in, all of that. But my question a minute ago was just to make sure that my assumption was correct. I think that's what we all meant. But, you know, before when we had conversations about new positions versus vacancies, and there was, you know, different people had different ideas on what that meant. I'm just making sure that we all mean the same thing when we're talking about what that flat budget was. So it sounds like everybody's on the same page. Is that correct?
Page are we on?
The amount, flat budget
Except for all the changes.
as of the May 21st.
Yes.
As of May, yeah.
There you go.
Just because there was a little bit of confusion by one of the departments earlier, I wanted to make sure that everybody up here was on the same page. It sounds like we are.
Please anticipate the additional funding necessary July 1 for the cleaning for the rest of the calendar year. That should be some $350,000 at the current rate of expenditure.
I think by that time, we'll have all the
CARES
we'll
Act.
have a lot of the CARES stuff kind of ironed out, and your funding should be straight out of there instead of.
So you'll load that in a PO for the end of the calendar year from that line item?
My anticipation is that the county expenses that need to be paid directly related to COVID going forward will come out of that account. We have a time limitation right now for your 80,000. If you could have waited another week and a half or week or whatever, then we wouldn't have to transfer from reserve. We could have done it directly out of there.
No, I understand that. Just when you consider a flat budget, the janitorial budget will not be flat.
Right, it'll be out of the other money. So our flat budgets are not lots of money.
Right, and there's other, now you're impacted more than most others, but there's other budgets that are impacted by that expense as well, and those expenses, in my mind, would be directly allocated out of that fund. All right. No action needed on item 8. Item 9, discussion of possible action regarding policies and procedures related to the newly established Special Project Fund 1400 CARES account. Action may include but not be limited to establishing a tracking mechanism for requests, development of guidelines, and receiving documents as necessary. Budget Board had a discussion last week, or several days ago. Time doesn't seem to exist anymore. It's just back. Prior to today, Budget Board had a meeting, actually it was last Friday, and wanted BET to kind of handle the recommendations for the money that went into that account. So I thought it would be appropriate for us today to kind of have some beginning conversations related to that, to kind of figure out what direction this body wants to go.
So Cody, there's been several discussions about the CARES money, and one of the things that arose was whether or not we were going to ask a legal opinion on the money and who's supposed to control it, who's supposed to deal with it, etc. Was that ever done? Let me rephrase that. Was that done by your office?
Not to my knowledge, no. My understanding was there was discussion of that in Budget Board, and it seemed like there was going to be a question asked before any action was taken. But I think Budget Board left that track and decided to go ahead and go this route, where BET would handle it and make recommendations to Budget Board, and then it would work its way to BOCC. So I don't think there was, while there was discussion about potentially asking a question, I don't think Budget Board really declared an intention to ask a question. If anybody else was in that meeting that has a different recollection than me, please clear the air. But that was my understanding.
I understood. I know the discussion. I don't remember them voting on asking the question of what office was posed at. Not to say an elected official can't ask that question. It wasn't Budget Board. It wasn't part of anything.
Right. No, I was just wanting to see if there was, before we started going off and making decisions, one, is there a desire to clear this up? Because it seems like the articles that you sent out this morning, it seems like Tulsa County set up something entirely different than what we're looking at. And it seems like the BOCC was the one, their Budget Board county, the BOCC is directing the money. It seems like that's the way it's working up there. So
I read that way.
I just don't know. We have to be, we can only operate with the statutory authority that we have. Do we have that statutory authority to operate and dole out federal money? So I think it's probably something we should clear up before we even begin to establish tracking mechanisms, guidelines, et cetera, quite frankly.
Well, while I understand, and respect, and maybe agree with what, maybe or maybe not, let me put it that way, with what you're saying, Miles, I think this board reports to budget board. And budget board has asked us specifically to look at this. I don't think budget board's asked us to seek a legal opinion on this. I think any member of the budget board could submit a request to the DA's office to see if the instruction to us is a valid instruction or not. But I don't think it's our place to make a unilateral decision whether a directive from the budget board was appropriate or not. I think it's our job to move forward based upon the direction that was given to this body by the board that we report to. And that's me taking off my BOCC hat, because here, this is a budget board committee. I think, Mr. Bottom, can you please state your name for the record?
So, regardless of whether the budget board or the BOCC, one or the other independently controls how this money is spent, or it's a combination of the budget board makes its recommendations through the contracts with BOCC, finalizes it, I think that part is not important at this moment. I think what you all need to focus on is taking a look at the guidance, and the intended purpose of the money is spent by the federal government for Oklahoma County to disperse. And that gets to, if you were here or you saw the budget board meeting last week, some of those categories that our offices specifically looked at as potential funding items. So I think, Miles, to your point, possibly, yes, in the future that might be necessary. But in terms of beginning to put some type of idea together of how the county might disperse this money, you're certainly can look to the guidance of the federal government and the Treasury Department to do that. And I think those items, not that every item that we presented is necessarily the items or the categories that need to be funded, but I think at least a starting point. And there is, especially in light of the article from Tulsa this morning, there's some pretty good indications, at least there, that they were thinking along similar lines. So, I'd hate for you to get bogged down right now over are we or are we not asking the DA's opinion and who's going to control the money. We could at least begin to look at what categories are going to be funded in that. And Cody has those 7 categories. So thank you.
We have been tasked with it. Your comments and Joe's are right. I think we need to start moving forward. Granted, there's the 3 commissioners are well represented here and can even take the lead if they'd like to. But ultimately, we were asked to start or get moving on. I know there's entities that need the money now rather than later. If it can only be expensive through December 30th, then I hate to lose a month or so, without making any movement. Joe mentioned the 7 categories you talked about.
Yes.
Would you be able to restate those for our?
We had, do you want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'll probably need
Only come up with
need a little bit of help, but we were looking at other local jurisdictions within Oklahoma County, the other cities and towns, other local government agencies, and that would consist of OCCHD in their expenses. Small businesses, which would include nonprofits. We had rental assistance.
So that would be to individuals
Yes.
or through.
And these aren't in any particular order. These are just, we've got county expenses and a reserve for county expenses.
So, a couple of things, Chrissy.
And one.
On the county, obviously, we need to address county expenditures up front. And then a little bit about the rental. If you've been following in the news, there was a backlog. At the time we put this together, there was about 300 evictions awaiting in the courts. Today, I saw a news story where there's approximately 400. That number is anticipated to grow. And as I mentioned in the budget board, we're not intending this to go to someone who's had habitual problems of just not paying their bills. This would be tied to some type of criteria where it's clearly established that the pending eviction is the result of COVID-19, loss of job, substantial medical expenses, et cetera. There are some of our nonprofits that I think we have some of our support grants with that kind of deal in this area that probably have a template of how to go about establishing that. So that's kind of the thought behind that there. And then the CARES Act itself, there's language in there that if a mortgage, this is mortgage assistance, but I think it also applies to federally subsidized housing, that those two, if you're having problems paying your mortgage or your rent in a federally subsidized program, there's eviction protection, and I think that's due July the 25th, if I remember the CARES Act. Right? So they address part of the problem through federal legislation, and this is a problem that's really beginning to arise. Those are those two categories. And then OCCH, combination entities, they receive some ad valorem dollars, et cetera, but they've had a large number of expenses.
Those are the categories that I can recall off the top of my head. When she had 6.
County, city, town would be the second, in no order. Third, governmental entities to include city, county health. 4, small businesses / nonprofits. 5, rental assistance for individuals. 6, reserve for.
Medical.
Oh yeah, medical providers,
Medical.
hospitals, clinics.
Hospitals and clinics. I apologize.
Thank you, Joe.
I have it.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything yet. I think that is something that we want to look at. On these, what we had talked about internally in our office was kind of, for instance, on the nonprofits, small businesses, and the rental assistance, those areas we would prioritize unincorporated Oklahoma County first. I mean, we're the only lifeline for those folks. Next would be people that live in municipalities outside the city of Oklahoma City. As we're all aware, City of Oklahoma City received funding to be able to help their residents. So we would then move from unincorporated to those local cities and towns that did not receive that type of funding. And then we would come in after that and help out the entities within the city of Oklahoma City that maybe City of Oklahoma City ran out of funding for, or, or whatever. We could come in and look at that on the backside. So I think establishing some categories, whether it's exclusively these 7 or more, I'm sure that we didn't anticipate all. I'm sure you guys probably have some that we didn't think about, but I think establishing some categories, starting to talk about some guidelines, and then setting up an avenue for entities to make requests.
Cody, it seemed like when you guys or maybe thinking the committee might do it, you established these 7 categories. Had you worked further through how you envisioned it?
Well,
Had you guys had those discussions, or Miles' office?
a little bit, but not.
I'm just curious on all thoughts and ideas up to this point. You helped a little when you said, obviously we wouldn't. I heard you right there, how you would prioritize, you do the cities and, the counties, unincorporated, then cities and towns and unincorporated. Start there. I think my concern was more on, if I'm a city and town, I guess I'm a city town, I know if I'm not Oklahoma City, I'm going to go to the state or the county.
Right.
And how, I just worry about if I'm that city and I need that money, I'm going to put in my documentation for both.
Yeah.
And I just worry about all of the communication that needs to happen between these entities, whether it's a nonprofit or, where all of you applied. And I don't know if we have to have something where they attest and say, I've turned this documentation in here, and what happens when?
Well, we've already had some entities reach out to us and say that they needed some support and some help. And so, preliminarily, not that these guidelines, but preliminarily, I sat down and drafted a few things that I think, if anybody's sending anything to our office specifically, and if you guys want, I can do this for the board as a whole. If anybody's requesting money, I think there's a few pieces of information that we need up front. And these aren't necessarily in any order, but number one, I think it's important that we have the organization's name and their EIN number if they're a business. The organizational type, whether it's a government, nonprofit, for-profit, etc. I think we need the organization's physical address and mailing address, what city and town, or are they located in an unincorporated area, the contact name of the person at the organization that we need to contact, and what their title is. Do they have authority to request help on behalf of their organization? Contact person's phone number, the amount requested, and the purpose of the need. How does this directly relate to COVID-19? Further, is this request for a reimbursement of funds already spent, or is it a request for a current spend that's needed right now, or a future spend that's anticipated down the road within the parameters of March 1 and December 30th that the Treasury Department has given us? And finally, have you sought any other sources of funding? If you're in the city of Oklahoma City, have you gone to the city of Oklahoma City? If you're in the city of Oklahoma City or any other area, have you gone to the state first? And if you have, what was the result of those conversations. And then based on that answer, you know, if they were told no for whatever reason, well, send us that, you know, documentation that you were told no, or maybe they requested let's say $5 million. And the city gave them $1 million, the state gave them $1 million, they're still $3 million short. Well, we're not going to look at the $5 million, but we may look at some amount of the $3 million, whether it's the 3 or 1 or whatever. So I think that those are all important things to track, and those are the things initially that I was wanting to track in our office for entities that may reach out to us, to our office specifically. Just kind of a groundwork. But I think we need a tracking mechanism, and it's interesting, I saw that Tulsa County was kind of doing the same thing. So entities would send an email and, you know, we can get it all on a sheet, make sure that all the information that we need to start the deliberative process is there. And that way, when we're ready to start making recommendations, whether that's in a week, a month, whenever that is, we've got the information there, and that'll allow us to either ask more questions or have enough information to make a recommendation based on that information. And once again, that was just me kind of spitballing for a few minutes, coming up with some questions. I'm sure there's stuff that I've missed that would be relevant and important. But are we reaching out with Tulsa County to come to some resolution of some similar policy or procedure in that aspect of things? Well, that could be helpful in dealing with their issue, because they have all of their money. They'll have to be dispersed for we have areas outside of it. Correct, yeah. That is something that I thought about this morning after reading the article, reaching out to Mr. Simonson, and kind of coming up with, you know, a game plan. But I didn't want to do that independently, being as that this is a group thing. If it were the will of this group, I would be happy to reach out to Mr. Simonson and kind of pick his brain and see what they're doing and come up with some ideas, as well as, you know, I'm happy to receive any requests and make sure that we get it, you know, documented and tracked and get the relevant information. So
I don't think that would hurt. I think they're a little bit ahead of us. You know, because they do get their money. I wonder if they've got I was trying to read the article. I got the impression, I mean, they're setting in, you know, turn in, the meetings on Tuesdays, on Mondays. I feel like they're, you know, farther along. I don't think it would hurt. They've got a process. I don't know if they've got something on their website people do or a form. It would be interesting to know, and to see what they're requesting as well. I think it would be helpful for us.
Well, if you guys would like me to reach out, I'd be happy to do that. And if you have individual questions that you would like me to ask, I think if you send those to me individually, not in a group, but an individual email, I'll be happy to address those questions and concerns that you have if the group would like to do that.
I would actually make a motion. As Cookie stated, reach out to Tulsa County, to Terry Simonson, and to see where they are in the process, and ask if they're, you know, how they're accepting the information and what type of information, and anything else helpful. Of course, any member of this board questions as well. Does that make a motion?
I second that. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Ms. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Lawrence?
Aye.
Mr. Honeycutt has stepped out. Melissa, you are the alternate. Would you like to come up here and cast a vote? You've been in here the whole time listening.
What?
Mr. Morrison seconded. Ms. Hodges?
Aye.
Mr. Lambert? Aye. Mr. Davidson?
Aye.
Mr. Morrison? Aye. Ms. Mertens?
Aye.
And Compton is an aye. I will be happy to do that. Thank you. You're welcome. Do you guys feel that it's too early to start establishing some categories, even if it's a non-inclusive list of categories, but at least a set of categories to start with?
I think finding out what the city, what the state, what everybody else is doing, including the city of Tulsa. I mean, theirs isn't really that clear. I mean, it's somewhat clear from this article. I think we need to figure out what everybody's doing, what the best practices are, and go from there. I think your categories have some merit, and some of them will probably be used, and some may not. So I think as soon as we're ready with all the information, when you talk to Mr. Simonson, and just to let you know, I'll probably talk to Mr. Peters, which is the chairman up there. He's an old friend, to see what their thinking and everything was. And then I've been in contact with the governor and their staff and talking about what it is that they're doing. What does their application process look like? And somebody needs to reach out to the city and find out what theirs is. And what we've got to come up with is a way that we do not duplicate payments. I'm not saying that it's illegal. I don't think that there's anything in it that says that it's wrong. But to be able to serve ourselves first and foremost, and then everybody else properly, we must ensure that we are not duplicating efforts. And if we don't reach out and coordinate with the state and with the city, there will be duplication of efforts.
Well, and I think a duplication of effort, you said that it wouldn't necessarily be wrong, but we wouldn't want to do it, but it could be wrong. If you got an entity that says we've lost, or we've had expense of $1 million related to COVID, and they get $1 million from the state, if we turn around and give them $1 million, then did we give them money that was necessary for their response to COVID when they already had $1 million? So they've already been made whole on that expense. Thus, our expenditure of dollars to them would have been inappropriate. So I guess what I'm getting at, Miles, is you are absolutely correct. We need to make sure that we've got a good tracking mechanism in place, because even if the need was $1 million and the state gave that entity $500,000, I think generically speaking, we would be okay to come in and shore up that shortfall of $500,000. We'd be okay there, assuming everything else was appropriate. But if that $500,000 wasn't needed because they already got the full amount, then we're in trouble and have issues. So we need to make sure that we dot all our T's and cross all of our I's on this thing.
Thank you for reiterating that.
Yes.
Well, but it's not a reiteration. There's a distinction in what you said. Just because one person gets an amount of money from the city of Oklahoma City or the state doesn't preclude them from needing money from us. Your statement was a generic statement of duplication of efforts. I'm saying that there's a distinction between how much they receive from which entity and what their actual need was. Entities could receive money from
Multiple organizations.
from multiple sources.
Yes.
But we're going to have to all be tracking who's given what and when.
That's the concern. You know, it just, every time a nonprofit has a request or a city, are we making a phone call to the state, call to Oklahoma City? It's just, there's really no pecking order, I don't think, established. I mean, do they have to go to the state and prove that this is what before they come to us?
I don't think they have to. I think that's something that we establish, and that was kind of when I mentioned, I think we need to establish categories and establish criteria. And in the criteria, that's where we start delineating the standard operating procedure for this. And we could say, the county, we can make a recommendation, and budget board and ultimately BOCC say, we are not giving out any money until you have exhausted all your other means. You've contacted the federal government, you've contacted the state government, and if you're inside of Oklahoma City, you've contacted them, you've exhausted all those before we'll even consider. I think that could be something that we put in the criteria. I'm not suggesting that we should, but I'm saying that I think it's kind of wide open here, and that's where we need to start figuring out what this criteria is going to be.
Can we go ahead and get the ball rolling? But in Oklahoma County, send out a request to all our departments for known expenditures directly related to the virus that they can start compiling and submitting to us, so we can identify those known expenses within the county. I don't know how we disseminate that request, but
I can ask Mr. Barnes to send that out from the emergency response committee if you guys would like for me to do that. And you had mentioned, or somebody mentioned City of Oklahoma City. I'm happy to reach out to City of Oklahoma City and kind of figure out what their guidelines are as well, since I'll be reaching out to Tulsa County. But if the group would like me to reach out to City of Oklahoma City on the group's behalf, I would want a motion and a second for that to be an official request.
I'd make a motion that you do.
Okay. Roll call vote. Ms. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Lawrence?
Aye.
Ms. Hodges?
Aye.
Mr. Lambert? Aye. Mr. Davidson?
Hi.
Mr. Morrison? Aye. Ms. Mertens?
Aye.
Okay. If we can at least get the ball rolling here and figure out what the other two entities in the state are doing, as well as getting a good hold, a good grasp on what the county has already spent, as well as, if you don't mind, I'll expand the question to anticipated expenses as well.
So you're saying departments will send it into his fund?
Well, David Barnes has been communicating with all of the departments. So what I can do is have Mr. Barnes send an email out requesting them to send that information to me and not to him. And then I can bring that information back to the group. He's already got a good procedure in place for contacting all of them. I mean, I can do it directly if you guys would rather me do it
I know,
directly.
I didn't know if you were meaning Barnes and go to the other committee, because then you're
No,
doing that. Okay.
No, I'll ask Barnes specifically because he is the chair of that other committee. He's been sending out bulk emails to everybody. And I think that way we can make sure that everybody is touched and I don't miss anybody. And I'll have him request that those responses be sent back to me, and then I will bring that information back to this group.
For purposes going forward, and I don't mind making a motion, maybe have Miles reach out to the state, make it formal. He mentioned he's gonna do it anyways, and that way we've got on the record Tulsa County, state, and the cities.
I mean, I've been in contact with them for quite a while, so formality or not,
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't really matter.
I will go ahead and make that motion if I could, just on an official capacity for our board, that Miles would reach out to his contacts with the state, asking the same type of things that Mr. Compton will do with the city of Oklahoma City. And I'll make that a second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Roll call vote, Ms. Miller,
Aye.
Ms. Lauren,
Aye.
Ms. Hodges,
Aye.
Mr. Lambert. Aye. Mr. Davidson.
No,
Mr. Morrison. Aye. Ms. Mertens.
Aye.
I'm an enthusiastic aye. All right, is there any other discussion on item 9?
I'm taking my clock down and going home.
You were gonna do it anyways, now you just have to report back to us,
Right, exactly,
which you would have done anyways.
exactly.
Yeah, I know.
Any other discussion related to item number 9?
Poor Sharon has to sit up there and type all this stuff.
Oh.
I'm sorry. We done on item number 10?
9.
Or not, number 9, I'm sorry. If there's no more discussion, let's get a motion to receive the report. We had a lot of discussion that was not necessarily encompassed in a specific motion. Is there a motion to receive the update from the board? The information?
So,
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Roll call vote. Ms. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Lauren?
Aye.
Ms. Hodges?
Aye.
Mr. Lambert? Aye. Mr. Davidson?
Aye.
Mr. Morrison? Aye. Ms. Mertens?
Aye.
Compton is an aye. One other question before we close this item out. As, I don't know if you guys, if your individual departments are receiving requests from entities as of yet. Do we want to start directing those now, or are you guys,
I don't know that anybody's,
as an office, just saying, whoa, hang on just a second, we'll get back with you when we're ready?
I don't know that anybody's office has actually gone out and solicited or looked for people to come to them. And I think,
I'm not talking about soliciting, I'm talking about
just listen
unsolicited
for a second.
requests.
I know you're a lawyer. It's difficult to listen sometimes. Here we go. What I think we need to do with this money is I think we need a unified voice. And we need to all say at one time that this is what we're doing. These are the categories. If you apply or if you qualify, please apply here and do so immediately. I don't think we need to further muddy what's already going on. And I know that people are coming to us and such, but I'm not sure that we need to be going out and soliciting as of yet. So if you've got requests, I would sit on them until we at least have some sort of guidelines before they even know what they can apply for, or if those individuals even will be accepted to apply. So, I mean, if your office, which sounds like your office has individual requests, I would say hold on to them for now. If any other office has individual requests, I would say hold on to them. But if those individual offices have internal expenditures, I would say get them to whomever to make that decision to get those things expended.
Okay, well, the last part of your statement addressed what I was talking about. The unsolicited organizations that may or may not, I would just have to assume that other individual offices have received requests because we have. So my question to the group is, do we want to do anything yet related to those that come in? Or are we just going to say, hang on a minute, we're working on parameters before we move forward. That's all my question was. That's why I was trying to stop you at the beginning, because I didn't need to listen to all of the stuff about solicitation, because that's not what my question was. So I was just trying to save this group time and effort.
You know, our office has had calls from several cities, and we have not formally accepted any, right?
Official
Like,
solicitations.
Call basically a city manager to push. And he's just verbally said, we're working through it, we have the money. And honestly, in the first initial calls, we weren't really clear if we could get.
Right.
And I think he said, you know, you may want to reach the governor's office, but of course that's come around, and we know we can give to city towns. And I think he's just he hasn't taken any information or saved an email or gotten any numbers from anybody. It's just been more verbal that check back with us or work.
Okay, and that was my question. Is that the
Watch
route
the website.
that we want to,
Yeah.
that we want to be moving forward with right now? And I'm fine with that. I'm just
On the website.
making sure that we're all on the same page.
And I agree with all of it coming from one place. Maybe we just tell these entities, watch the website. We'll have something up on the banner under COVID. We'll work out. I'd hate to take something from someone and then it drops through the cracks, or they assume the date of my EWEL was the day I started my process. You know,
Right, yeah. Well, and that was the other thing that when we do start just taking in information, we'll need to make sure that those entities understand that at that point, we're not necessarily talking about that you've applied for anything. It's just hey, you know, you said that you would like to be considered. We put you on a list, and we'll get back to you when we're ready to start considering. But yeah, we want to make sure that people are clear that when they are actually applying and when we're not ready for them to apply, but we're just taking their information.
You know, more defined process or procedure in place so that it's uniform for one and all.
Right. I agree.
What if we were to skip the step of just taking information? You figure out what we want to do and say, it's open as of this date. Here's a link to all the information. Here's the categories that don't fall in it. Don't agree.
Mm-hmm.
But taking information and somehow getting word out, okay, now it's open for application.
Okay.
You know, unless you feel like you're going to get some valuable, I'm just thinking we continue to meet as often as we need to and kind of nail a lot of this down, get a lot of information from the others and get moving.
Okay. Well, and just to let you know, I'll have a preliminary discussion with our IT department about what they may or may not need to establish a website that is going to be able to ask the type of questions that we're going to need to ask and allow people to submit applications. That kind of stuff. That way, when we're ready for that, we've hopefully got something developed and ready to go.
I think that would get you the results that you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have one more general question or just topic of discussion while we're still on mine. What do we foresee asking these entities or these categories as far as how much like when you're reading through the stuff, the guidelines, how much documentation do we feel like we have to have in order to be comfortable with the record keeping? You know, once December 30th is done, we have to turn back money. I haven't seen a lot of things there really.
That is some of the questions that I would
Okay.
talk to Tulsa and City of Oklahoma City and see what they're going to do, because in my mind, this money was given to the county, and it's going to be up to the county to be able to verify that the money was spent appropriately. So if we give the money to organization X and it's not actually spent appropriately, I think federal government's probably going to come back on the county. If they come back, they're going to come back to the county for that, and then we're stuck either having to, cross-claim another, entity in and trying to get the money back from them. So we need to make sure that this is structured in an ideal format from the beginning to be able to make sure that we have as few headaches as possible back. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll move to item 10. Discussion and possible action to receive an update on employee benefits. Mr. Wilkerson here. Or Danny, are you doing it for
Yeah,
them?
if he's not on, here's the weekly medical and prescription claim update. So you can see medical and prescription claims were pretty much dead even with where we were last year through the week of May 13th, when we paid out. Then netting out all the stop loss reimbursements, rebates, refunds, were actually down a little bit. So claims netted out, net paid claims about 552,000, or about 3.6% over where we were last year. And you've seen that come down. So John has stated that we should continue to see that come down, maybe even out by the end of the fiscal year.
I hope we don't see a dramatic catch-up in the first and second quarter of the new fiscal year.
I think that's going to happen.
All right, is there any questions? Is there a motion to receive the update?
So moved.
Is there a second? Roll call vote. Ms. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Warren?
Aye.
Ms. Hodges?
Aye.
Mr. Lambert?
Aye.
Mr. Davidson? Aye. Mr. Morrison?
Aye.
Ms. Mertens?
Aye.
And Compton is an aye. Item 11, discussion of possible action regarding any item currently on the BET watch list. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. Board comments. Ms. Miller?
No comment unless we talk about something on the meeting. Unless you just want to call.
We can discuss that when we decide whether we're going to recess or adjourn. Okay, Ms. Lauren?
No comment.
Ms. Hodges?
No comment.
Sorry, Mr. Lambert? Mr. Davidson?
No, thank you.
Mr. Morrison?
Just one, I know Keith's not here any longer, but I just want to say thank you to him and all those that are helping to keep our buildings sanitized and clean and safe as possible.
Ms. Mertens?
No, thank you.
None for me. All right, is there any new business? Seeing none, is there a motion to recess or adjourn? We could recess and keep this meeting going, or we can adjourn and I can call a special meeting for next Monday or something like that.
You're probably going to need much broader and different language, so I'd make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion to adjourn and a second. Ms. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Lawrence?
Aye.
Ms. Hodges?
Aye.
Mr. Lambert?
Aye.
Mr. Davidson?
Aye.
Mr. Morrison?
Aye.
Ms. Mertens?
Aye.
And Compton is an aye. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.